Most drivers think that sentence sounds innocent, but to an officer, it can sound like an opening, and your own words start building the case against you. Hit subscribe right now because what you're about to hear could save you from talking your way into handcuffs. Like this video too, so you can find it fast when your nerves hit and your mind goes blank. If you've ever been pulled over, you already know how fast your brain starts racing. Your hands get tight on the wheel. Your voice changes. You want to explain yourself. You want the officer to see you're a good person. That's why so many people blurt out, "I didn't do anything wrong." But that sentence almost never helps you. It usually keeps you talking. And the more you talk, the more chances you give them to hear something weird, spot something small, or ask one more question. Most people have no idea how quickly a simple stop can turn into a fishing trip. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the pattern is always the same. First comes the casual question. Then the driver starts explaining. Then the officer starts digging. In this video, you're going to learn the exact lines that shut that down, how to refuse a search without sounding rude, how to know when the stop should be over, and what to do if you're told to step out. Let me show you exactly how to protect yourself without fighting, running, or acting tough. Here's the reality. You do not win a traffic stop by sounding innocent. You win by saying less, a lot less. When you say, "I didn't do anything wrong," you think you're closing the issue, but you're actually opening 5 more doors. The officer can ask what you mean, where you're coming from, why you're nervous, whether you've been drinking, whether there's anything illegal in the car, whether you mind if they take a quick look. Now you're not talking about a taillight or rolling stop anymore. You're talking about your whole life. And once you start explaining, your words can sound defensive even when you're telling the truth. Your voice gets shaky, your story gets long, tiny details stop matching. That's when a normal stop starts growing teeth. Here's the reality again. Your goal is not to convince the officer you're innocent on the roadside. Your goal is to avoid giving away your rights while still staying calm and lawful. You give your documents, you follow lawful orders, and you stop feeding the conversation. The first thing you do is stop trying to prove yourself innocent with extra words. You're not there to talk your way out with a speech. You're there to handle the stop and nothing more. Here's exactly what you say. "Officer, I will provide my license, registration, and insurance, but I'm not answering questions." Word for word. Memorize that line. It is calm, it is clear, it is respectful, and it does not invite a debate. When you say, "I didn't do anything wrong," you keep the door open. When you say, "I am not answering questions," you close it. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I didn't do anything wrong." Then the officer asks more questions, here's more details, and keeps the stop rolling. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I will provide my license, registration, and insurance, but I'm not answering questions." Then the stop stays focused on the actual reason you were pulled over. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection. Why? Because your words are evidence. If you're tired, scared, or just trying to sound normal, you can still say something that hurts you. Maybe you say you came from your friend's house, then later say you stopped at the store. Maybe you laugh at the wrong time. Maybe you answer too fast. None of that proves a crime, but it gives the officer more to work with. And that is exactly what you want to avoid. This comes up because clear words matter. In Berghuis versus Tompkins, the Supreme Court said silence alone is not always enough. If you want the protection of silence, you should say it clearly. In plain English, if you want to stop talking, you need to use direct words instead of hoping the officer gets the hint. That's why this line works better than shrinking into your seat or mumbling. You're making your choice obvious. Let me show you exactly why this matters in real life. When an officer asks, "Where are you coming from?" that can sound harmless. But if your answer leads to the next question and that leads to the next one, now you're in an interview you never meant to join. The fix is simple. You do not argue, you do not lecture, you do not say, "I know my rights" in a loud voice. You keep your tone flat and your words short. "Officer, I will provide my license, registration, and insurance, but I'm not answering questions." Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it shows you are calm, direct, and not consenting to a roadside interview. Think you could stay this calm with lights behind you and your heart pounding? Tell me in the comments, because most drivers freeze right here. The second tactic is the one that stops your car from turning into an open box. If the officer asks to search, you do not explain. You do not joke. You do not say, "I guess so," if you want. You say one line and only one line. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Those exact 8 words. Say them slow, say them clear, then stop talking. This is 100% legal. And you need to hear that again because people panic here. Refusing consent is not the same as resisting. You're not pulling away. You're not hiding. You're not being disrespectful. You're simply refusing to give permission. That matters because once you consent, you make your own life harder. If they search because you said yes, it becomes much harder later to challenge what happened. Bad way. Most drivers say, I don't have anything, so go ahead. Then the search starts, and your own permission helps justify it. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Then the officer has to rely on real legal grounds instead of your nervous agreement. This is where Schneckloth versus Bustamante matters. In plain English, the Supreme Court said a consent search can count if your consent was voluntary. And the court also said police do not have to prove you knew you could refuse. Think about how big that is for you. The court does not require the officer to teach you the rule first. So if you don't know, you can say no, and you say yes anyway. That can still be treated as valid consent. That's why your one sentence matters so much. Watch what happens. When you say the line the right way, the whole tone changes. The officer now has a choice. Either the stop stays about the traffic issue, or the officer has to point to some other real reason to push farther. That is a huge shift in your favor. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it forces the stop back onto legal rails. No free permission, no casual mind if I take a look. Trick. No smiling your way into a full search. And here's the part that catches people. After you refuse, the officer may keep talking. They may say, "If you've got nothing to hide, why not let me check?" That line is designed to make you feel guilty. Do not take the bait. Innocent people still have rights. Nervous people still have rights. Good people still have rights. You don't need to justify your refusal. You do not owe a speech. Just repeat the line if needed. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Then be quiet. Watch what happens. The pressure often gets weaker once they realize you're not giving them free permission. The third tactic is how you stop a short traffic stop from becoming a long roadside investigation. Listen closely because this is critical. Once the job of the stop is done, you need to know whether you're free to go. Here's exactly what you say. "Officer, is this stop over or am I still being detained?" Say it just like that. It is simple. It is calm. And it makes the officer show their hand. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. A traffic stop is supposed to have a mission. That mission is things like checking your license, registration, insurance, and writing a warning or ticket. It is not supposed to become a never-ending guessing game. In Rodriguez versus United States, the Supreme Court said police cannot stretch a traffic stop longer than needed just to go on a fishing trip, like waiting for a dog sniff, unless they have separate reasonable suspicion. In plain English, they cannot keep you there just because they feel like it. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I didn't do anything wrong, so why are you doing this to me?" Then the talk gets emotional. The stop drags on, and you still don't know whether you can leave. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, is this stop over, or am I still being detained?" And then the officer has to answer with a clear legal position. That one question helps you in two ways. First, it stops you from just sitting there while the stop quietly expands. Second, it creates a clean moment. If the officer says you're free to go, you leave. If the officer says you're still detained, now the line is clear. Your stop is not floating in some weird middle space anymore, and that matters later if anyone has to review what happened. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. The law cares about what the stop was for and how long it lasted. You should also know what not to do here. Do not throw attitude into your question. Do not say, "Am I being illegally detained?" That turns it into a fight. Your line is cleaner and smarter. "Officer, is this stop over, or am I still being detained?" That sounds like a normal question, not a challenge. And that matters because your tone can change everything. If you stay calm, you give yourself the best chance. 90% of drivers don't know what's coming next, and that's exactly why they get trapped in longer stops. If you've made it this far, you're serious about protecting yourself, so hit that like button and stay with me. Because this next part is where people ruin everything. The fourth tactic is what you do when the officer gives you an order, like stepping out of the car. A lot of drivers panic here and say, "Why? I didn't do anything wrong." That is the wrong move. You can refuse consent to search and still obey a lawful order. In Pennsylvania versus Mims, the Supreme Court said an officer can order a driver out of the car during a stop. In plain English, if you're lawfully pulled over, the officer can tell you to step out even without a long explanation. So do not make that your hill to die on. Here's exactly what you say. "I will comply, but I do not consent to any searches, and I am not answering questions." That line is gold because it does three things at once. It shows you are obeying. It keeps your refusal on the record, and it stops you from filling the air with nervous talking. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Why are you making me get out?" Then the stop gets tense, the officer gets more suspicious, and you lose control of the moment. Good way. Smart drivers say, "I will comply, but I do not consent to any searches, and I am not answering questions." Then you obey the order while still protecting your rights. This is 100% legal. You are not resisting, you are not escalating. You are separating compliance from consent. That is a huge difference. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection when the stop starts changing shape. If the officer says, "Step out," you step out. If the officer wants to search, you refuse consent. If the officer asks questions, you decline. Clean, simple, smart. And if the stop shifts hard and you think you're about to be arrested or interrogated, your next line gets even shorter. "I'm invoking my right to remain silent, and I want a lawyer." That line is not for arguing on the roadside. It is for the moment things turn serious. Clear words protect you better than scared silence. Now let's lock in the legal side in plain English so you really understand what is backing you up. Berghuis v. Tompkins tells you clear words matter when you want to stop talking. If you want silence, say it clearly. Schneckloth v. U. Bustamante tells you consent matters, and police do not have to prove you knew you could refuse. So if you give permission, even by trying to seem cooperative, that can be used against you. Rodriguez v. United States tells you a traffic stop cannot be stretched longer than needed just to poke around. And Pennsylvania v. Mims tells you an officer can order you out of the car during a lawful stop. So you should comply with that order while still refusing consent and staying silent. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings, and it all fits together for you in one simple system. Give your required documents, follow lawful orders, refuse searches, stop answering questions, ask whether the stop is over. Now picture your own stop from start to finish. You see the lights, you pull over, your hands shake a little. The officer walks up and asks where you're headed. Wrong way first. You say, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just coming from my cousin's house. Well, actually, I stopped at the gas station. I'm in a hurry. Now you've given 3 details nobody asked for. The officer hears nerves. Then comes, you mind if I take a look? You say, sure, I guess. I've got nothing. Now your car's open. Then the officer says, hang tight for a minute. You sit there 10 more minutes not knowing whether you can leave. That is how your own mouth builds the problem. Now the right way, same lights, same stop, same officer. You hand over your documents. The officer asks where you're coming from. You say, officer, I will provide my license, but I'm not answering questions. The officer asks to search. You say, officer, I do not consent to any searches. The officer asks you to step out. You say, I will comply, but I do not consent to any searches and no questions. You step out calmly, no drama, no speeches, no attitude. Then the warning or ticket is done, and you ask, officer, is this stop over or am I still being detained? That is how you keep your rights. Watch what happens in that version. Your words stay tight, your tone stays steady, your choices stay legal. The officer may not like it, but your job is not to be liked. Your job is to protect yourself. And because your lines are short, there is less to twist, less to misunderstand, and less to use later. That is why smart drivers do not try to win with charm, excuses, or long stories. They win by giving less away. Next week, I'm breaking down what you should say when an officer claims they smell weed coming from your car. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it, because that claim changes the whole stop and drivers handle it terribly. So let's lock this in one last time for you. First, never say I didn't do anything wrong. Second, if questions start, you say, officer, I will provide my license, registration, and insurance, but I am not answering questions. Third, if they ask to search, you say, officer, I do not consent to any searches. Fourth, when the stop should be ending, you ask, officer, is this stop over or am I still being detained? And if you're ordered out, you comply while still refusing consent and staying quiet. Your power is not in sounding innocent. Your power is in being clear, calm, and hard to exploit. Hit subscribe so you catch that next video on the smell of weed claim and how drivers get trapped by it. Smash that like button if this helped you protect your rights before you ever need them. And drop a comment telling me which exact line you're going to remember first. Stay safe, stay calm, and keep your mouth from doing the officer's job for them.